Hi, I'm Marijke.
And I'm Jennifer.
And this is
Party Time with Cats
Chats. Party time!
Woo!
If a parent is bringing their child to speech and language therapy for the first time, what's the key piece of advice you give them?
Well, I suppose it depends on the age of the child, first and foremost, and the temperament of the child as well. So if you've got a kiddo who is really nervous or anxious, you might need to explain to them a bit more what's happening and where you're going. You might need photos of where you're going, who you're going to see, maybe why you're going to see them, in a very child-friendly way. If they're very young, it's more about maybe preparing what you want to bring with you. So the SLT might ask you to bring specific toys or snacks or something to the session, so we have things in the session we know the kid really likes.
Favorite toys work well because I find you can't really do a speech therapy assessment within child's mouths full. Sometimes that's an issue, but from a soothing perspective you might want that as a backup or some kind of reward at the end. But most of the time our jobs as speech and language therapists would be to make it fun and engaging, and we will do our utmost to make it fun. So I find it fine that the parent says, we're going to go see Marijke and you're going to play some games. Don't use the word work.
Don't use the word work.
We're playing games in speech therapy. We disguise the work in the games always. But it's maybe about relaxing. I know it's I think for parents putting a parent hat on, you're a little bit anxious going to somewhere new and figuring out how things are going to happen and how it's going to be. And to be honest, I'm just as nervous. The first session I had off, I get really anxious because I wanted to go well. Because the first session, first impression, you want the kid to be happy, you want the parents to be happy, you want it to work well. So if the wheels fall off, you're going to try and do whatever you can to make it a good experience, because that's really important. And then the other thing I always tell parents is trust your gut. Professionals have different qualities to their work. You have great GPs, you have GPs that's okay, and you have GPs that are maybe not so good. And it's the same in speech and language therapy. We all differ in how we do things. And if you hear something or see something and you're like, this is not right, trust your gut.
Absolutely.
You know your child best. You're the expert in your child. And if they're not listening to you about your child, they're maybe not the right fit for you. That's the main thing, I think.
Because there's only so much you can even prepare for a speech and language evaluation. I think it's really good to let the SLT know ahead of time what are some favorites. So if there's favorite characters, favorite toys or activities, so that the SLT can be prepared with those materials. I think that's really handy. If a kid will do anything for bubbles, then I'm going to make sure there is bubbles on the floor or on the table or somewhere. So the second they walk in, zoom, they go straight to that favorite toy.
And will tell us which ones they are really maybe fixated on, that they're not probably going to change from that to something else. So they might cry when the cards go away. So then we know that we use the cards at the end. Or something like that, and find a way to transition out of the session. But even sometimes the way when you do a first session, you want as much information as possible, and the more a parent tells you, if they need to tell you if they've seen another speech and language therapist, right? And because it's not a problem. We want to work together, and it's the best practice to do that.
Absolutely.
And we want to work that. And what I find is people are anxious about losing their public services. they have every right to have private therapy at the same time. So I usually say, well, in that case, go, hypothetically speaking, if I was getting private therapy, what would happen? And if they go, the wheels will fall off and will be ridden into the sunset, you know, and taken out of your misery, then, you know, you just go, okay, then I'm not having any. But most of the time, best practice would be to work together. So if the therapist goes, that's no problem,
I'd love to connect with them.
And that is the main thing. Give us as much information as possible. If it only 5 sessions into it, you go, actually, Dad stutters as well. That would be really good to know.
It's good information to have.
At the beginning, is there a family history, or it's something like, oh yeah, you know, he actually does have 5 words. He says this, this, and this. You know.
Yeah, it definitely helps us to inform our therapy, as well as, say, if we're doing an assessment. And I think a big piece you're saying about, you know, being upfront about other services. If a kiddo's gone and had an assessment somewhere, and then you're bringing them to us for, say, a second opinion, but not telling us, that can really skew our results. It can invalidate a test that we're using. So I'm always asking parents, you know, have you been assessed recently? Can I have a copy of the report? Can I have permission to talk to the SLT who did the assessment? Because I need to know. You know, if the child's had the PLS or the SELF for one of our assessments, and it's less than 6 months to a year old, then I can't actually give that test. And then I'm over-assessing the child rather than starting with the
different
intervention.
tests, different time pieces. So we need to check which assessment it was. Is it going to be 3 months, 6 months, or a year? That's allowed between those. So we know, do we need to select an alternative tool so we're not wasting your time assessing. And even being able to tell us, listen, he doesn't usually react like this. It's another thing, isn't it? Like, or my child does do this usually. So we know is what we're seeing.
A good picture
of
the child.
And feel free to say, I can record my child, video record, now obviously with consent, but I can video record my child doing this so you can see it. We love doing that because it's very hard to replicate in a therapy session what might be happening at home. For example, if they're stuttering, they might not necessarily stutter at all in the clinic. You know, and sometimes it takes 6 months before a child will stutter in my sessions, and that's what it is.
Or a child with vocal nodules is very polite and calm and follows all the rules in the session, but at home has maybe a bigger temperament or might abuse their voice, and to be able to hear how they're using that voice at home is very
because if the therapist,
good information for us to have.
Because if the therapist doesn't know that, they won't know why the therapy is not working. Because you don't have all the information, or if the homework we're giving you is not right. It's not a right fit for you. You don't have the time. You know, we know when you're not doing it. We can see when you're not doing it. You could lie about it, but we'll know you're not doing it because we can see the results. Just say, listen, this is not really working in my life. Is there something else that I can do? You know, there are 3 other kids, and is there something we can do? Like, you know, very often I Spy in the car is one that's
I love
a
me
classic.
some I Spy.
That's a classic for a lot of different goals too. But it's something that you can do on the run if you don't have that 20 minutes sitting and working on something, depending on the child's age, of course. And
I think being upfront is so important because we want the session to be successful. We want the homework to be successful. And if it's just being left in the car or nothing's happening, then we're not as effective at our job. So I think if parents have that open relationship to say, this is not working, we can go, okay, let's come up with a plan that's going to work for you so that you can be successful, even if it's just these tiny baby steps to empower you to get to where you feel comfortable using these techniques at home.
And if there are any questions or worries or anything like that, to mention it, because if you don't feel comfortable talking in front of the child, because sometimes they're at an age where you're like, actually a separate conversation is a good idea, then we can have a scheduled phone call at a different time and talk through these things. Because there are times when we're like, okay, child should not be in earshot when we're talking about this, because it might just affect their confidence and so on. Because we might just be problem solving and so on. We can truly be honest about everything at that stage. Yeah.
And then I suppose from a time perspective, we might only have a certain amount of time organized for a client. So it might be we have an hour booked out. We might have an hour and a half. Might be 45 minutes. It's hard to say. But we don't like to be rude. SLTs don't like to be rude. No. And often parents have a lot they want to say, which is great because we want all the information. But sometimes we've made it to that hour. We have another kiddo coming in, online it might be in 5 minutes or 15 minutes. Now I suppose post-COVID we'd be having to sterilize the room and there's a lot more work to involve. So we might actually have to say, okay, our time's up. We have to go now. If there is more to say, we might have to schedule that phone call, or you might put in an email what you want to say. So we've got all the information. But we don't want to say, okay, you have to go now. But if we have a set amount of time, we often have to stick to that time.
Yeah, exactly. If you have any questions,
give us a call.
Send in your questions and we'll try our best to answer them.